Okay, so we've got a task 1 map type question. So let's take a look at the topic. So the map below is of the town of Galston. A new supermarket marked S is planned for the town. The map shows two possible sites of the supermarket. Summarize information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Okay, so this is something often people tend to miss out of their task 1 answers, is they're missing out the keyword here, which is comparisons. So where relevant, so they want you to use some kind of comparison language. So usually, people are used to doing this if it's like a bar chart or something, you're comparing two sets of data, or if it's two pie charts, it's kind of more obvious where you're going to do the comparisons, right? But this is something you also need to practice doing when you do your map questions, when you're answering for question 1. So when I'm looking at this map, I'm thinking, okay, well, they've told you that there's two potential sites for your supermarket, 1 and 2. And so I think in terms of comparison, what they're looking for you to do is compare the suitability of the two sites, or the main features of the two proposed sites to each other. So that would be how you would get in your comparison language and how you would get your full task achievement. Okay, so usually selecting and reporting the main kind of features. So usually for a map 1, you want to sort of have kind of 2 sections. So usually in a task 1 essay, we're looking for a sort of 1, 2, 3 paragraph structure. One where you've got your sort of overview and your sort of paraphrase of what the map is about, and then your kind of overview of the general theme or the general topic of the map. And then you would sort of have, feature 1 and feature 2. I think this one's a little bit trickier because they usually have 2 different maps, for you to compare. So, either you can do it where you sort of you describe the features of supermarket 1 and then you describe the features of supermarket 2 with the added comparisons, put those in your sort of 3rd paragraph. Or I guess you could also compare it in terms of, I suppose you could do it in terms of like whether it's in the type of place it is. So you could do sort of 1 paragraph where you're comparing in terms of like countryside and like town center. And then you could do one where you're sort of comparing proximity or how close they are to the railway and the roads. So obviously both of them are close to a railway, we can see. And then they both have these roads and their distances to these different towns. So that's probably another way that you could do a comparison if you wanted to. So either you could sort of, there's probably easier to structure it like this, but you're going to have to make sure you get all your comparisons into the 3rd paragraph. Or you could perhaps structure it where you do your overview. Then you sort of compare the location in terms of land use. Going back to my GCSE geography knowledge about how we would talk about this. And then in your 3rd paragraph, probably proximity to transport. Okay, because that would make it easier to sort of compare as you're getting lots of comparisons in as you're going. So you might say, for example, supermarket 2 is actually easily accessible to 2 different areas with much larger populations. While supermarket 1 is physically closer, but to a smaller town. Okay, so that's sort of the comparison you can be doing. I think, to be honest, if I was writing this answer, I would probably want to go with this structure. Because what they really want to see in a task 1 is they want to see a sort of logical split of information. Okay, so a mistake a lot of candidates do when they're writing their task 1 is they just kind of go through all the features and just randomly do a paragraph. So there's no particular logic to how they've split their comparisons or split their features, okay? So this is the kind of crucial thing that they're looking for high achieving task 1, is to see that there's a logical reason why you've divided your information, okay? So this is something I see a lot in candidates where it's just kind of like, here's the overview, and then we sort of have 1 paragraph where we're talking about 2 general points, and then the next paragraph we're also talking about similar points, but there's no real reason that you've divided up your information like this. So especially for task 1, it's so important that you do a quick plan. It's so important that you spend a little bit of time looking at your map, looking at the information that you've been given and deciding, like I just did then, what are your 2 ways that you can divide up the information you've been given. Okay, so that would be my feeling. So let's take a look and see what this candidate has done. Okay, so we're starting with the overview section. The map displays the structure of Galveston town, where the number of residents is 65,000, and has 2 candidates marked S on the map for constructing a brand new supermarket. Okay, so this is pretty good. What we've got here, what I like, is we've got a nice aside clause here in their sentence, and then we've got another one up here. Okay, without adding in extra information in these extra clauses. So what we have here is we have a nice complex sentence, okay, which is really going to help your grammar score. A lot of candidates don't know that when they say a mix of simple and complex sentences to get to band 6 or up for grammar, a lot of candidates don't really know what they mean. They don't really know what that kind of sentence structure looks like. But it's similar to this, where you have these sort of extra like subordinate clauses added into your sentence. So that's good. So that's plus points for grammar. Good job. I like the sort of like, they've given a good general overview of the map. I think that's fine. And then let's have a look next. Overall, the town center is located in the middle of the map, inside the housing district. Okay, I like that. Furthermore, the resident region mainly filled most areas except for the countryside surrounding the edge. Okay, this sentence is a little bit more vague. The resident region, I think I have an issue with that. It should be the residential. We're describing, it should be an adjective. The residential region mainly filled most areas, except for the countryside surrounding the edge. I mean, that's a bit, I can kind of see what they're actually physically describing the map. What I would say is probably something like, the town center is located in the middle of the map, inside the housing district. And then I would probably say the second biggest region, maybe. The second largest region is the residential area, which is subsequently also means next, which is subsequently surrounded by countryside or undeveloped countryside or something. I mean, that's fine. They kind of do physically describing the map. What I would think I would have liked to have seen them done in this overview is give it a general comparison between the 2 supermarkets. So something like, you know, the 2 candidates marked S on the map for constructing a brand new supermarket. One is located in the central, town area, or is located in the center of the, in the middle of the town center. You know, one is centrally located close to a railway in the center of the map, while the second, you know, bracket S1 is located in the countryside, but closer to, you know, it's located in the northeast of the map in the underdeveloped countryside area. So I think that's how I would have liked to have seen the comparison more, because it's more relevant to talking about these supermarkets than kind of doing this kind of weird describing it like it's a painting. So I think what this candidate has done is okay. This last sentence is a little bit odd, just because what they're doing is odd, describing the map like a painting or like a drawing. So I think what I would want to see from this overview is I would have written the 2 kind of, you know, position 1 S2 supermarket is in the middle of the town center, centrally located, close to a railway, while the second candidate S1 is in the northeast of the map and is proposed in the underdeveloped rural countryside. Okay, I think that would have been a better overview. That's what I would have been looking for. Overall, I think this is quite a solid overview and quite a solid introduction. Let's look and see what they do next. One candidate for the supermarket is in a rural district. Okay, I like your use of rural, and the other is in the town center, which prohibits vehicles. Okay, industry zones are split into 2, north and south. Okay, the railroad runs through the center of the countryside, town center, and residential areas from northwest to southeast. Okay, whereas the main roads spread out from the town center to 3 different ways. In 3 different ways, Hindon, Branston, in 3 different, should really be directions, and then here we need to have towards Hindon, Branston, and Cranston, directing to the northwest, southwest, and east. And we want to have in the north and southeast, respectively. In addition, these contain 10,000, 50,000, and 290,000 inhabitants, and apart from 2 common, 12 common, 6 common, respectively. Okay, so this candidate has sort of done a classic thing that a lot of Task 1 people do, and I don't know if you remember when we were talking about my general planning at the start. What do you think my main issue with the structure of this paragraph is? Give you some thinking time. I'll tell you. My issue is that it's just a list of different features of the map. I don't feel that there's particularly a logical structure to what they're doing, that they've thought about it in any way. They're just moving through the map and describing things to me. Their description is fine. Yes, they have picked out the correct features. Yes, they have described the features. Yes, there are a couple of grammar issues. I mean, sure, but they've shown me that they're capable of interpreting what the map is showing them. But what they've not done is they've not shown particularly strong coherence or logical split, and there is not very much comparison going on. So we've got one here. So they compare the two locations, but I mean, this should really be, comparing the supermarkets should really be the main focus of the essay. You should really be focusing on the differences in the two proposed locations. That's why they've given you the two different locations, S1 and S2. The examiner wants you to be comparing them. So we've got a comparison there. They have tried to do another comparison here using whereas. I'm just going to say for whereas, this should really be in the middle of a sentence. You shouldn't be starting a sentence really with whereas. It's one of those ones where it needs really to be in the middle of the sentence. My brother likes eating pizza, whereas I like eating burgers. It sounds odd if I say my brother likes eating pizza, whereas I like eating burgers. Sounds kind of strange. So whereas should really be in the middle of a sentence. So it's kind of like, it's like they say, okay, that they compare the supermarkets, then they talk about industry, then they talk about railroad, then they talk about roads, then they list out the directions, they list out the towns, they list out the populations. So this is all fine, but this is all repeating to me information that's on the map. You're just, this candidate is doing a lot of repetition of information and relisting of information, and they're not really trying to make a wider point about it. So what they've done is they sort of answered the task in a sort of minimally correct way. They've picked out the main features. They have tried to do two areas of comparison. Yes, they've given me a sort of an overview, but what this candidate has failed to do is to really analyze the information in the way that task 1 requires you to do to get those higher levels. Okay, it's deceptively easy, task 1, because you think, oh, I just need to describe the information. And it's true that you don't need to have an opinion, you don't need to have an argument, but you do need to think carefully about how you're describing the information to show a higher level of thinking. Rather than just sort of like listing off, the different facts, information, like all this information about the towns and the population, this candidate has just listed off to me, being like, one road leads to Hindon, one road leads to Branston, one road leads to Cranston. Hindon is 12 kilometers, Branston is 16 kilometers, Cranston is 25 kilometers. Well, what you want to do to get those higher levels is doing this comparison. Whereas supermarket 1 is closer to Hindon, bracket only 12 kilometers northeast, the location for supermarket 2 is closer to both Cranston and Branston, 25 kilometers and 16 kilometers away respectively. As Branston and Cranston have a higher population, bracket 29,000 and 15,000 respectively, it may be a better location than supermarket 1. You're trying to sort of compare like that rather than dryly list off the information. You want to be bringing in that comparison. You want to be bringing in that analysis to get those higher grades for your task 1. So I think a lot of candidates tend to sort of skip their practicing for task 1 because they think it's so simple. And in a way, to get like a 5.5 or a level 5 in your task 1, you know, is quite simple. And I think this candidate can do that. It's just when you're pushing for those 6.0s, your 6.5s, those band 7s, you really need to practice, you know, how you're going to think about your answer and how you're going to divide up your information. So when I'm looking at this candidate, I'm thinking for task achievement, you know, they did, you know, do the basic of what the task was asking them for. So they sort of, you know, minimally address the task, but they're not going for that higher level of comparison. So I guess what I'd want to give them a 6, I guess, for task achievement. Which kind of undermines, I guess I just said that, you know, because they did do it. I feel like this candidate has done a reasonably good job. I'm like, it's the coherence and cohesion that I'm having an issue with. So I think coherence and cohesion, I probably want to give them a 5.5. I thought this candidate actually has good vocabulary. So when we look through, we can see that we've got prohibits vehicles, industry zones. The railroad runs through. This is very good, okay? Runs through is a good phrase to be using with railroads. We've got countryside. We've got residential areas. We've got main roads spread out, okay? I really like these kind of phrases that they're using. So this candidate's vocabulary is very good. So I think I already want to give them a 6.5 vocabulary. Their grammar also was quite good. I liked the sentence structures. They used quite a lot of nice sentences. It's just kind of when we get to these listy ones towards the end of this paragraph, you know, that we had a couple of issues. But it's quite, you know, easy to follow and easy to read. So again, for grammar, I'd want to give a sort of a 6.0. So I guess overall, coming out of the 6, I feel like I made a sort of big deal at this. You know, this is a reasonably strong answer. You know, I could see an argument for bumping it down to a 5.5, but they have like addressed in a clear, readable way the basics of what the question wanted. But let's say you're one of those candidates you're stuck at a level 6 and you're trying to move up the bands to a 6.5 or a 7. For your task 1, the things I talked about structuring and thinking about dividing your information up is really going to help you with your logical organization of information, okay? Coherence, okay, and cohesion. A lot of this is logical organization of information, okay? And this will go up if you can divide up your answer like we talked about.